they have created some kind of stress point in that rod, or they were high sticking it. It's very. It. I think everyone's done it at some point in their life.
Everybody probably. I mean, I know we do. I'm sure you do. Everyone has like one of those friends when you're just getting stuff on their boat and they're just looking at your gear like, "Oh, Mister Fancy Schmancy, I've had this ugly stick for 30 years and it isn't broken yet." What do you say to that guy? Like, how do I shut him up? If you're interested in doing a trolling trip, I just did one not a trip, but I just trolled around Valley the other day with 10 rods. You saw the videos of us doing it with the veterans. If you're interested in doing that before you go out and buy the stuff, Yellow Dog Paddle does all those trips right now. In the fall is a great time to do that. If you want to learn how to run planer boards and downriggers, not even downriggers, he doesn't even use those because he doesn't need them. If you're interested in trolling for Lakers and trout and pretty much learning how to do it before you make the big investment, Yellow Dog Paddle is a great way to do that. You don't even need to bring anything with you other than food. Everything's included. So if you are interested in a fall trolling trip, call Yellow Dog Paddle today. You will not find anyone better in Jersey that's trolling these reservoirs. Hello and welcome to episode number 74 of the NJ Multi-Species Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Santiago, and as always, my partner, Chris Pereira.
What's up?
Tonight we have a guest who is a rod builder, and also, Chris, you want to talk more about it? Because you know more about him.
I literally sent you the intro for him.
Oh, okay. All right, well,
you didn't pay any attention to it?
No, I didn't have time to. I know he builds custom rod. He's a rod builder. He does something else that he just told me 5 minutes ago too, but I forgot.
Well, he's a big a saltwater kayak fisherman. He builds.
His name's John Creeley.
Correct. At least you got the name right this time.
Yeah, I know. I'm just kidding. So that's our guest tonight, John Creeley. Over the weekend, fishing. I fished Round Valley with Jen Wong and my Uncle Rich. Chris, you fished Round Valley too, and you fished Merrill Creek also?
Yes, I did. Yep, I fished both days. The weather, as anyone that went outside knows, the weather just never. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it never changed from just crap, just drizzly, crappy, windy, rotating between those characteristics.
The weather for us Sunday when we went was terrible. The wind on the Round Valley was horrible. I could really only run one side of the boat because the planer boards kept turning sideways on one side. It was just an east wind coming right back into the boat launch. But we managed 5 fish, 3 rainbows. Jen got 1 nice brown, and my Uncle Rich got a nice Laker. I didn't post those pictures yet, but I will tomorrow. Mike Herman continues to do really well fishing Yellow Dog Paddle. The trolling bite continues just to be good. The fish have already come up like 10 feet since we fished the lake a month ago, so they're coming up higher because it's been colder at night. So the color of lead core that was working a couple weeks ago, it kind of came up to less lead core.
What were you getting hit on?
I was getting hit on 3 the most. Which really? during the Veterans Tour I was getting hit on 5 the most, and it's 5 foot per color. So 25 feet was the hot number a month ago, and now this past time I went, it was 15 feet. So they moved up 10 feet already.
I mean, the day before, I didn't get touched on anything shallower than 20 feet.
I didn't have one hit on a downrigger the whole day. Not one.
So that's just weird. And that's just from one day to the next without the weather really changing either.
Well, the day that we went, I think the downriggers outfished the boards, didn't they?
If not, it was close.
Yeah, this was all boards. I did not have one ball. I didn't even have a clip get triggered all day. Nothing on the downriggers.
Yeah, I don't have anywhere near like an extensive spread. Like I bought I bought 2 new planer boards, and so I set out 2 planer boards on each side and 2 downriggers, and I didn't put the downriggers that deep. I think I did them 30 and 40 because the 30-foot lead core had already been hit. But yeah, on the ones that I had set shallower, 10 and 15 feet, they didn't get touched all day. We had a couple hits on the 20 and 30 lead core. The 40 downrigger got hit. Whatever it was came off near the surface. It was either a small laker or a rainbow. We had a couple hits that didn't stick, and we didn't get that. They didn't get that much time in trolling, honestly, because the weather turned on us, like just like you said. But like it got dangerous. We had to leave. I'm surprised. Do those alarms still work over there? Because they didn't come on. And
well, it has to hit. It has to pick up a certain mile an hour.
The wind speed wasn't bad, so I guess that's why it didn't come on. But like the way it goes, like the way the wind swirls in there, was like that back corner was like it was not good.
And then we're gonna have to get more of the story on what happened with Alexis, because apparently Max and Kevin invited her fishing with us. I didn't even know about this, by the way. Like I knew Max and Kevin were coming in a separate boat with Kevin's daughter. Apparently Alexis came in with an inflatable and followed them out to the center of Round Valley, and she actually caught something and they caught nothing. I don't know what happened exactly. We need either Max or Kevin on here to explain this.
So they invited her fishing, but then told her she had to use her own boat, and then they didn't catch anything anyway or help her in any way, shape, or form, but then she caught a fish anyway, and they didn't?
In a nutshell, that's what I'm getting from it, yes. Okay.
That sounds right about... I mean, that sounds like Max and Kevin, if I'm being honest, yeah.
So, yeah, we will definitely have Max discussing what exactly happened, because he was on Round Valley and he got skunked somehow. In other fishing news, the Gambler is finally able to go tuna fishing with the weather. Last week they weren't able to get out there. They're finally able to sail.
Did they got out there with the hurricane coming in?
They didn't get out yet, but they're going to be able to.
I was going to say.
They've been pretty much getting screwed over, but now it looks like the openings are going to start, where they're going to start being able to make the shoot there. Also, Seabass season reopens again tomorrow, October 1st. I don't. What does it go back to 10 fish a person?
Does it open tomorrow, as in right now when we're recording this, or is it open tomorrow when this episode comes out?
Okay, yeah, no, it opens 3 days ago. It's Friday. It's Monday night, so Tuesday, October 1st. I'm pretty sure Seabass reopens to maybe 10 fish per person. I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, I don't look back and keep track and make sure that it's always changing. And until I'm gonna go, 15. I don't even look.
I highly doubt it's 15. It's probably 10.
No, it ain't 15. No, there's no way it's 15. Remember,
it's 8 or 10.
Peter Clark was telling us they keep trying to even lower it.
Yeah. So yeah, you could email us and make fun of me that I'm wrong if it's not 10, but I think it is 10. I might be right. So yeah, Seabass is reopening. Eddie Mackin, he's back on Lake Pacon. I talked to him. He said the hybrid striped bass fishing kind of slowed, but the walleye bite picked up. There is a fairly decent. I mean, it's not like on fire like it's going to be, but it's It's definitely here a little earlier than usual. There's a couple nice walleye being caught already. They're kind of staging up into the fall kind of pattern now.
I got to imagine that there's some kind of like, because the hybrids started a little bit early, that fall hybrid stuff. And then now this is, I feel like it's kind of like a false start for both of them, and then it'll kind of reset. That's what I think is going to happen.
Like the salmon run. Salmon run was the same thing.
Yeah,
Huge false start on the salmon run, and now the salmon run is still dead. I'm still reading reports of the estuary just being loaded with them swimming in a circle. They will not enter the river yet. It's any day.
Are we going to get into the talking about the salmon after the guest, I guess?
I was hoping to get a guest, like a salmon guest on for that discussion.
Oh, well, then you better hurry up.
No, not today.
I'm saying, yeah,
you want to bring? You're saying you want to have the conversation during. Basically, the conversation is Chris is saying salmon fishing isn't fishing. I like salmon fishing. I've been doing it basically since I got a driver's license. One of my favorite things to do. He's saying that I just pretty much praise it because it's become a tradition to me. So it's a discussion we do want to have. And I know everyone who does do it has a pretty strong opinion on it. And the people that don't do it probably don't do it because they heard horrible things about it, or they've done it and they hated it and are on the side with Chris. So it's an interesting...
I don't hate it. I can accept it for what it is, but it is not fishing.
I mean, it's salmon fishing. If you want to target a salmon in a river with rod and reel, this is how you have to do it. It's the way it's done.
You're snagging them.
It's still salmon fishing. You're flossing them. I could use any terminology for it.
Okay. I mean, spear fishing is fishing. Bow fishing is fishing.
What if
dragging a net on a commercial boat is fishing? I mean, you call anything fishing. My point is, it's not fishing in the sense of you're getting a fish to bite your hook.
For those of you that are watching that don't know about salmon fishing or have never been salmon fishing, when the salmon enter the river, basically in a nutshell, and there's a whole nother conversation with this where people throw plugs and shit, and I've had salmon eat my baits before, but they don't eat. They come into the river, their throat shut, and they're done eating. They're ready to, fulfill their life cycle and pretty much just die. Not interested in eating. They bite things that piss them off or get in their way a lot. But there's so many salmon in the river that if you do keep casting, eventually your hook's going to probably land in one's mouth. And when you pull up, you're going to set the hook in one's mouth. Now, if a fish is snagged in the mouth, is it snagged? Because if a fish has a hook in its mouth, it's really not snagged because it's hooked in the mouth like any other fish. So it's an argument.
In the sense that it has a fair shot of like the fight of the fish is the same, but you still snagged it. I mean,
yeah, well, but how else would you catch? I mean, you could go down to the mouth of the river and just throw like J plugs or skein and hope to have a bite in the estuary from like a fresh fish. I've had fresh cohos in DSR slam egg sacs. I thought they were steelhead because it hit the egg sac so hard, and then you get it in. It's a silver salmon, but it doesn't happen that often. A lot of guys post online that, I only go up there and catch the ones that bite. You're full of shit. You're a liar and you're a snagger just like me. Get the fuck out of here with that shit. You're lying. Yeah, the other guy had to comment on the one video. They're easier to land when they don't swim sideways. Yeah, how many did you hook in the side this year? Probably 800 of them. Fucking trolls. I hate it. Now I'm just getting mad. But
jeez. Yeah, well, you're
salmon fishing, yes, it's very unorthodox. It's not like any other kind of fishing. You're basically casting continuously into a river at fish that don't eat with a bait that isn't even really bait. You just have to have a hook with anything on it. It could be a piece of someone's sock. It makes no difference. By law, you can't have a bare hook, so you just have to put anything on the hook. You could like literally put a piece of your girlfriend's pocketbook on the hook, and it's legal.
My buddy used to make jigging flies with like his dog's hair and his wife's hair. It didn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And when you cast a fishing hook into a school of 30 gigantic 40, these fish are 30 to 40 inches. They're all humongous. When you cast a fishing hook into a giant pod of them and pull the hook up, you don't exactly know where the hook is going to be. It might be in the fish's mouth. It might be in his ass, and it might be in his tail. You don't know. If you see a video of a guy online and he has a fish hooked not in the mouth, most likely he didn't mean to do that. You really can't control it. Like
that depends on the guy.
All right. Well, if it's if you see some guy running up and down the river and he's chasing a fish, smacking his rod down, you know what he's doing. But if there's just a guy like blind fish in a hole, and all of a sudden he's got one on, and the fish just happens to be snagged like underneath the stomach or something, he didn't do that on purpose. He just is salmon fishing, set the hook, and that's where the hook caught. You could
you're getting really worked up over this, and it's just I have barely said anything. I mean.
Because people have so much shit to say from their fucking couch, and they've never done it themselves, but they have so much to say about it.
I think this is the most you've ever cursed, too, by the way.
All right, well, Deuce, edit the curses out. I don't even want to talk about salmon.
He's not going to edit the curses out. Are you serious?
All right, well, keep them in. I don't care. Whatever. I don't even care about this. You're the one that was bent up about salmon fishing. Now you're getting me worked up about it.
I was worked up over the entire situation I had to get my car towed. I had to get the starter replaced. The fish weren't running. We're walking all over the place for no reason. Like I said, I wish I just stayed behind the lodge and just chilled out and just caught a couple of fish as they came by, like I've done the last 2 years every time. That was my 7th day on the 3rd season fishing there, and that's the first time I've never hooked and fought any fish until the one day I did, and then Max kicked it off because I was wearing a Mikey K shirt.
While you bring that up, I have to comment on that. Max, we have to say he is the worst net person we've ever seen. If you're a member of Multi-Species Mayhem and you ever encounter this person, Max Wilson, and end up fishing with this guy, all right? Never let this guy touch your net. Never. I literally watched Chris. Chris was kind of struggling. Look, Chris is new to salmon fishing. He was struggling for a fish.
I couldn't snag a salmon. I fish for a lot of things. I'm not exactly sure how to snag these fish.
He doesn't have
on accident, purposely in the ass mouth. Whatever you want to call it.
But he finally got one on. He fought it maybe 200 yards downriver. He got it into the shallow slate flats, and I'm saying in my head, oh my God, he's finally going to land one. We're going to get a picture of Chris holding his salmon.
It was done. I just wanted one picture, just so like, here, I have a picture from the weekend. I can put it in my memories.
I'm looking down the river. He has the leader at the tip. I mean, the fish is in. And I'm happy.
Nothing else I can do. There's nothing else I can do.
Yeah, this guy's going to get a picture with his nice salmon. He's going to be in a better mood. I don't have to hear his bitching as much anymore. And then all of a sudden, I just see Max, and he's just violently stabbing the fishing line with the net. Like, he's not even trying to net the fish. He's stabbing the fishing line. He's trying to net the salmon in the tail, which I don't know if you're also watching this, please remember, fish cannot swim backwards. So when you use a net, do not go for the tail, because they will not back themselves up into the tail. They swim directly out of it. It's the only direction they can go is out of the net. So you never scoop them from the back, which is Max's first move, of course, right to the tail. So then we scream at him. He comes around to the front. Now you scoop the head of the fish, but you got to remember the line is going right there into the fish's mouth. Chris knew to wait right? Because you had the net, the one in the shallows that was like flopping, and you kind of waited. So you did.
When I was netting his,
I think it was mine. It was one of
yours.
ours.
One of yours.
You netted it exactly right. You put it right in front
just,
of its face. It swam right in by itself.
Right. I didn't want to try to net. It was digging into the rocks, and I just, I kind of waited it out. But you wait, far enough away from the fish so that the fish can't swim into you. When he came over to net mine, he came in right next to the fish like he was gonna net it, which he should have. But then he just waited and waited and waited, and I'm like, the fish just like swam into his leg, and he just kicked the line right off.
Yeah, and I saw the fish come off on Max's leg, and I knew at that point that it was just going to be not good for anyone. It was right there. We had it, and then actually just after that, about 5 minutes, I didn't post this video yet, but I hooked a salmon 5 minutes later, took it downstream, and landed it myself because I had one on earlier before Chris's that Max lost on me also. Stabbed it, broke the line with the net. Same shit. So in the last 2 hours, I was able to hook one. I fought it about 200 yards downstream and was able to land it up into the flats myself and get a picture without having Max beating my line with his net. I got the fish. So do not let Max near your fishing nets. Anyone.
Yeah. Moral of the story: net your own fish when you're fishing with Max. We're gonna need to Deuce. We can't get the guest in. He's having a little bit of trouble, so we're going to need to fix that.
Okay. Guys, please just remember, if you like our podcast and the videos we make, to go over and check out njfishing.com. 27 years is the number one resource in NJ fishing, freshwater and saltwater information. Totally free. All you have to do is email Jerry Zagorski for a username and password. Gives you access to the archive and the history of the archive. You could look back years and years, meet a lot of people. Me and Chris actually met through njfishing.com, and we met a lot of our friends through it as well. Please head over to njfishing.com and give it a check.
Yeah, guys, anytime someone asks me a question about fishing that I don't know the answer to, my answer is the same every time. That's go on njfishing.com and post the question. You will get an answer every single time. And you may get multiple answers, and they may all be a little bit right. You'll get different opinions. You will solve your fishing issue on njfishing.com. Trust me. I'm not just sending you there because I don't want to talk to you. There are a lot of the information there is unbelievable.
Okay, so we were able to get our guest in here. We have John Creeley, a custom rod builder for the past 5 years, now out of New Jersey. John, welcome to the NJ Multi-Species Podcast.
Guys, thank you for having me. I appreciate you having me on as a guest. Really look forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely, John. Absolutely. We have not had a rod builder yet. I mean, I don't know if we had anyone that makes rods for fun or anything like that, but they never mentioned it. And this is the first time we've had someone that.
Yeah, he is the first rod builder. We haven't had one.
And just explain before we get started, just explain what you just explained to us, because we didn't want to let Joe do it and screw it all up. Because you used to make your own just custom rods, like you kind of had your own business going, right?
Yeah, it was a little side business going on when I first started. And now, I'm sorry to cut you off there. Now I'm moving on to working with Advanced Fishing. They're one of the top tier builders for Century rods as far as custom rods. And then you also have other rod builders that work with Century and have been working with Century for very long. And you'll see someone like Hatteras Jack or Advanced Fishing be your go-to for a Century rod.
Now, when I hear that right away, Century rod, Frank Mihalik just pops right into my head because he's like one of the guys we look up to the most for black fishing, and he will only use that rod. And basically every rod I show him, he tells me sucks except his Century rod. So you actually make that rod, you guys?
So, yeah, so that's the nice thing. Like, if you go to the store and you buy a Century Pro Togger, we have a basic layout. And that's kind of like what Frank designed for most, people that go for Blackfish. That's what he sees people use the most, that short butt section, the little bit of a longer foregrip there, But the nice thing is when it comes to, if you come to me with a Century Pro Togger build, I'm going to sit there and ask you for measurements. Do you want the butt section at 10 inches or do you want it at 20 inches? That's the beauty of a custom rod. So sometimes spending that little bit of extra money, say the Pro Togger, I can't tell you what it retails off the top hand. I know it's upper 500s. With that being said, you go get a custom rod, tack on another $150 at most. If you're changing out the guides or something like that, and it's just a basic custom rod, you now have a Pro Togger that's built to you on the same blank, though.
Yeah, I know. I remember when we talked to Frank, like Joe said, he really raved about these Century rods. They were a little bit out of my price range at that time. So I went,
that time, have you moved up since then?
No, they still are. But just in case someone watches this episode, 20 years into the future, and maybe
Chris is homeless.
that's most likely I'll be dead in 20 years, but with the shit I do. But no, my point is, like, I didn't listen to him, but not because
it's expensive.
Didn't listen to him. It's a bit of money, but you can tell just from, if you go to the store and buy a generic rod, you can tell the difference even between an $80 rod and a $200 rod.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, if you can afford it, it's definitely worth the money.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's its own different type of tog rod. I've never used anything else like it. I used to fish a lot of Rod Geeks. I'm a guy that loves composite and fiberglass rods for blackfishing. Now, that being said, this is a graphene construction. It's a whole different type of rod. You have to fish it to understand that rod. I can't even explain it.
So when you're saying, all right, so you've got I know there's a lot of different composites and stuff, but the two basics, or at least what it used to be, was either fiberglass or graphite, right?
Correct.
And now they have all different kinds of combinations, or is there totally different materials they use now? Like what?
There are so many different materials out there. Now, some companies will say, I have an IX7, which in the long run, it's a graphite type of rod. And then you have the guys that just make strictly fiberglass rods, which would be more of your trolling rods. You see a lot of those are fiberglass. Those rods, they were used a lot for, the bottom fishing, those fiberglass, having that little bit of more sensitivity in that tip.
So
again, I'm sorry.
So the fiberglass tends to be the more sensitive rods?
Not nowadays. That used to be the case back in the day, but nowadays it's changed. There are so many different types of materials out there. It's hard to keep up on.
There he is.
Is this any better for you, Joe?
Now you look like a serious podcaster now. I want to ask why you stepped away. I was just asking Chris. All those lines on the wall behind you, that's the line that wraps the eyes around the rods?
Yeah, that is correct. And then with decorative wraps too, like you'll see somebody do a nice fancy wrap right above the foregrip. These right here would be like a shade packing. So if I wanted to go, do a yellow perimeter around, a diamond or something that we're making, that's one solid color, I will work that thread out until it's shaded out to the last color. Now, you have different types of threads, like that would not be recommended to run around an eye because it's very weak. Now they make specific threads that are thicker that will bond that guide a lot closer to the rod itself in a tighter wrap.
I get you. I want to ask you this question too before I forget.
Yeah.
The Pro Togger. So that rod, basically, the way that you guys designed it and build it, it's a Blackfish rod. That's what it's made for. When you guys build other rods, like, do you design them around a specific species like that, or are you just trying to build an all-around rod that could be used for whatever?
So the Pro Togger, Frank and Ryan, I believe, were the ones that worked with that one. Their mindset was just, this is a Blackfish rod, and let's make the ultimate Blackfish rod. When they were done with that rod, they realized that this rod could be used for so many different scenarios. Now, there are a few other blanks that we do have, and one specifically is called the drum gun. And that's, aimed towards North Carolina, South Carolina, if we're going for red drum down there. So there is some kind of thought process behind these blanks. This one's going to do this one's going to do this, but at the end of the day, you can use these rods in different scenarios and situations.
What goes into that thought process? Like, what is different about the drum rod that makes it a drum rod?
I personally don't have that answer right now. Still learning some of it. This is still fresh. It's just, I'm starting to work with Century back in May. So when I get more details, I'll definitely be able to reach out to you and let you know.
Yeah, I'm curious because I caught 3 weeks ago. I just caught my first drum ever. I don't. Okay. Was that your first one? That
was a black drum.
What's the difference? It's a drum. No?
Well, there's a lot of difference. The black drum is much wider, and then you fish for it totally different. I went red drum fishing one time down in Louisiana, but it was like pup red drum fishing, and I think we were using popping corks with shrimp or something. So obviously that didn't really take anything special. But when he's talking red drum fishing, these guys. Red drum to them is like largemouth bass is to John Gabergruni.
Oh, they love them?
Yeah, they throw all kinds of lures. They have all different, they can target them with all different kinds of lures and stuff. That's my understanding, at least.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
so, do you guys make freshwater rods or only saltwater?
So here's the nice thing about this year with bringing me onto the pro staff, which I'm very thankful for. He also decided to do a couple other things. And the two things that we also did now is we brought on JS rods. I don't know if you guys have heard of them. Kill Sung, who was with Black Hole, now works with JS. So we're seeing his blanks come in the shop now, which sets it at a different price point. It's not going to be the Century priced rod, and it's not a Century rod at all, but it's a very nice rod. You have, like we've talked about, earlier, you go to the store, the difference between an $80 rod, a $250 rod, and let's say a $500 rod. You know where I'm getting with this. That's going to be that nice middle tier, if not a little bit more, because some of the rods do reach the Century prices. But with that being said, we also brought on striker rods, which they are the budget-friendly rod. And that's where you're going to see more of our freshwater rods come from, because they are based out of, I believe it's California. And their mindset behind that is make a rod for every application. And they do freshwater, they do salmon, they do fly, they do surf, they do inshore rods. So the nice thing is now we can offer that. We can make some freshwater rods.
See, that when I buy a rod, right, I'm looking for, the first time I ever bought a rod that was very specifically for just one type of thing was a Blackfish rod, like a bait rig bottom fishing Blackfish rod. Now, obviously I can use that for a couple different things. And I think Joe got the same rod. We went into Jigging World and we got, their mid-tier or even probably lower tier, but it's still a good, decent, nice rod. But my point is when I buy a rod at the store, I'm thinking, how many things can I use this for? Like I'm justifying the price that I'm going to pay for it in my head. But that's me. That's, I have my own budget and other people have their own budgets. So I guess my question would be is like, I don't own a custom rod. I don't think Joe does either.
I do not.
When you go for a custom rod, it doesn't have to be specifically for a species of fish. It can be really whatever you want it to be, I don't know, right? Am I wrong?
No, and you're absolutely not wrong. And I'll put it this way. One of my favorite off the rack rods would be the Tsunami Carbon Shield. I've caught bluefish up to 9 pounds on it. I've caught a couple tog off the jetty that were 4 or 5 pounds. And I've caught multiple fluke on it. Right there in itself, is it aimed more towards, a top water or a little bucktail, skipping it across the water for, blues and stripers and stuff? Absolutely. But it also has a nice backbone and sensitivity where I can use it for bottom fishing. I think where I'm getting at with this is you can find a reason to justify how much money you're spending on a rod, because you will be like, all right, I could use it for this, that, and the third. I know it'll be better here. It's not going to be the best here, but I still can use it. I would bite the bullet at that point and make that purchase.
How do you feel? How do you feel about the hybrid rods that they start as the bait caster and then twist to the spinning rod at the end? That seems to be like the new thing now that everybody wants.
Oh, the acid wrap? That's what they call them?
No, I'm talking about the hybrid rod, like our tog rod, the first eyes here.
Yeah, it's called an acid wrap. I think the eyes kind of go down, so you can use a conventional or a bait caster, but the eyes follow it rather than you. I guess.
Yeah, they're spun like a downrigger rod.
So it's funny that you mentioned that, and I don't know how much truth there is to that. But it does make sense in theory. If you think about it, you go out trolling, right? Those guides now being, instead of a full conventional rod, they twisted those eyes around the rod. And now those lines are actually pointing the direction and have less stress now because it's going with the flow of the rod. That was the thought process, I think, back in the early 1900s. It goes back that far. They use that as trolling rods. And I might be totally wrong, but I have heard that from a few different people. Now, those guys thought about that and said, hey, we could use it bottom fishing. It makes sense. That line is now turned the flow of the rod, and you're going to feel a little bit more out of it.
It makes sense.
It does.
I'm going to be, honestly.
I didn't know the idea has been around 130 years, though. I thought it was like a newer thing.
And again, I could be totally wrong on that, but I do believe those few people, they're well-respected rod builders, and I do believe that 100%. It makes total sense.
If you are wrong about it, or even if you're not, the internet will take care of it. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. The internet trolls will take care of it one way or the other. It doesn't matter. But
sure.
What was I?
So if you picked up your stuff to build yourself a custom bottom fishing rod right now, you would make your rod wrapped like that, twisted?
So here's the one thing, at least for me, that I've learned. And again, this is a big thing. It's all personal choice at the end of the day. Some guys do not like an acid wrap rod, and I've seen it, and they can't fish it. They just don't feel it right because they've been fishing the same broomstick for 30 years now at this point. So they're just stuck in their ways, and some of those guys, you can't break it.
Well, we know.
For me, being anchored up in a situation and I am straight up and down, I feel the acid wrap rod is great. For me, if I start using an acid wrap rod while, going into a drift for flounder, it's not happening. I don't connect as well. And I think it's just a mind over matter thing. But again, personal choice and preference. You got to be comfortable how you fish because that's what's going to make you succeed.
It's almost like like for me personally, if I wanted to make a real decision, like we got the acid wrap bottom fishing tog rod, and I like it, but I've never used I'd have to use that same exact rod, but without the acid wrap, and then use it, and then use the other one, and then to compare them. I don't really, because I don't know. I don't really have a real comparison.
Well, I wanted to take that acid wrap tog rod and just change the reel and take it fluking, but I never got a chance to.
Yeah, and you know what? I wonder if, like he said, I wonder if you won't like it. Because it'll feel different.
I hope not, because I was planning on that being like my fluke rod.
Well, the nice thing is, though, just to throw this out there, is those guys that go up to Nantucket, they swear up and down by that pro togger, because sometimes, you're dragging 6 to 10 ounce bucktails, and all of a sudden, that's where that rod's going to come into play. It's going to be able to handle it.
Huh. All right, so Deuce, mute yourself because we can hear you. Anyway,
Deuce,
so don't worry. The other week he started eating a bag of Doritos while he wasn't muted, and you could hear him slobbering on the microphone for like 5 minutes. So wait, Joe keeps knocking me off track. I want to get to a specific question. So one of my favorite off-the-shelf rods is like the line of Shimano Trevally rods. And was that you don't like them?
Here's the thing. I despise of every Shimano product out there. Not saying that they make a bad product. They by far make some of the best products. I just don't like the way the reels feel. And I'm just kind of jealous of the rods because they are badass rods.
I don't really like a lot of their reels either, if I'm being honest, but I do really like their rods. So I'm glad that a rod builder is a little bit jealous of some of the rods. But anyway, so and like I said, I don't have the money to buy a lot of custom rods. I hope to have at least one or two someday, obviously. But when I go to the store, I need a rod. A Shimano Trevally, it's a nice price, whatever, and I like them, right? So when I'm using, like, just to use a specific example, like let's say I'm using I think it's the Trevally, the butterfly jigging or something like that. I forget the exact name. It's like a green spinning rod. It's a jigging rod. I use it for a lot of different stuff. I used to fish from the kayak. I'd use it for that. I liked it for that because it was a shorter, it was only like a 6.5, maybe even a little bit shorter rod. And it had, a good, and I don't know if the terminology is wrong for a rod maker, just correct me, but it had like a good backbone, got a fast tip. But if I hooked into something, like it had that parabolic bend, like went down, like it bent. It had a good in between where like you knew you had the backbone to handle a bigger fish, but it's also like you get that whole bend in the rod. And so my question for that would be, so let's say I'm a guy, I use Trevally rods a lot, I like them, I want a custom rod. And I say, look, I really like this whatever Shimano rod, but I want this, but I want it a little bit slower of a tip or a little bit longer of a butt end. I want a little bit less backbone, more backbone, whatever. Like, you guys can do that pretty easily depending on the.
So in reality is we have so many blanks out there, and we may have something that might match up to what you're describing, but we might only have that one, and you may not like that. So the next thing you do as a rod builder is you try and find a different brand that you're familiar with, and that's where, JS is going to come into play, especially for the slow pitch guys, because Century doesn't have anything to offer in slow pitch. So now we go and look at JS. Hey, we have this, and this to offer. Come to the shop, bend them in the ceiling a little bit, and see which one you like the most. Tell us which one compares closest to what you already have, and then we'll take it from there.
So when you say like you have it or you don't have it, you're talking about like the blank, right?
Correct.
And from that, you can only do so much as far as making it faster, slower, or more power, less power, or whatever.
Well, they don't make the blanks. They just get them. So that he's saying he can't. If you ordered a 3-foot rod, he doesn't have a 3-foot blank. He can't make it.
Correct. And then what I would do from that point, hey, we don't have this blank in stock, but I know where I can order this from. We dealt with them before, or we'll find something that is comparable to what you want. We'll order that and then build at that point. Now, I think I know where you're going with this, Chris, to change the differences between a fast tip or a slower tip. No, you can't do any of that. That blank is already made to that slower or faster tip. Now, if I took a couple inches off the front of that tip of the rod, just say we're taking a 7-foot rod, we're going to bring it down to 6'10". Customer wants 2 inches off the tip. Yeah, it's going to make it a little bit slower because now you're changing that whole property in that front end of that rod.
The power would be the same if it comes as a medium heavy rod. It's saying a medium heavy rod, right? Can't be changed.
Depending on where you take that out of the rod now. If I take 4 inches off a butt, now you're changing that drastically. How that power is going to be, because now that reel seat has moved up, and you've also taken strength away from the end of the rod as well.
Wait a minute. So the power of the rod is determined by how long the butt is?
Not how long the butt is, but if it's made at 7 foot, and I take 4 inches off that butt end of the rod, now I've changed the properties in that butt end of the rod, and it's going to change the forward motion. So now I've moved that seat where, let's say,
basically the center point of where the rod used to bend is going to shift now to a different spot.
Correct.
I get it. Perfectly makes sense. Okay.
See, all right. So that you pretty much nailed my misunderstanding. See, for some reason, I thought that you could maybe like sand down the ends of it to like change the power or the speed. You can't really do that.
No.
Okay. I don't know where I got that from, but
now the biggest thing is too, and you bring in sanding. Not a good idea when it comes to rods. And just put it this way: if one of you guys break off, a tip at home and a couple inches behind it and go, yeah, well, I could just put a tip on it. Don't start sanding the blank itself as far as like the taper portion. Clean up the tip where you're going to slide a new tip top in, but don't sit there and start sanding the rest of that rod, because at that point, now you're taking away some of the fibers that have been wrapped. Now you're making it a weak point for it to break again. Okay.
All right. So it's basic. I mean, I know it's not the same, but just for reference, it'd be like a fishing line. Like once you start damaging the outer layer of that fishing line, even though it may still be the same thickness or like it'll never be 100% what it was.
Exactly. Like you just put a nick, especially, that's a big thing. Guys will hang, their jigs or, lures or whatever off the rods in the back of the truck.
Yeah.
And I'm notorious for it too. And you put it right through the stripper guide, not the eyelet, but the frame, whatever. Well, now you hit a speed bump or a pothole or something. That jig just put a nice gash in the side of that blank. Well, now you've just made it a weak point. And it could be all the way that back far in that rod, but it's now a stress point where if you load up on a big fish, it's going to break.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, you probably agree, like when someone's fighting a fish and they're holding the rod properly and that rod still explodes on a certain point, they're almost guaranteed there was some kind of damage at that point. I mean, that just doesn't happen.
Correct. And that is going to be, most of the time, it's user error. They have created some kind of stress point in that rod, or they were high sticking it. It's I think everyone's done it at some point in their life.
Everybody probably, I mean, I know we do. I'm sure you do. Everyone has like one of those friends when you're just getting the shit on. You're putting your stuff on their boat and they're just looking at your gear like, oh, Mr. Fancy Schmancy, I've had this ugly stick for 30 years and it isn't broken yet. What do you say to that guy? Like, how do I shut him up? Like, I just want to shut him up. What do I say to him?
There ain't much you can say to him. Just go back into the cabin, sit down, close your eyes on the ride out, and hope you don't make eye contact with him when you wake up.
I know who you're talking about. I mean, he refused to use braid for bottom fishing for years and years.
I'm not talking about anyone specific.
Yeah, you are. Wait, real quick. So this is another tog. I don't want to make this like a tog fishing rod episode, but I just tog season's
he mentioned that rod. Once he mentioned Frank Mihalik's like battle sword, it's a tog episode. It's over.
Yeah, sorry, but one more thing about the tog, right? And I texted you this. I told you I was going to save this.
Yeah.
So I know I'm an outcast with this, but when it comes to using a jig for tog.
Okay, I thought you were going to ask him which side the handle should be on.
No, this is not a real real episode.
Which side?
I can get into this, but let him ask the question first, and we're coming back to that.
Okay, two guys are going to bash me. All right, listen. So, all right, when I'm using a jig for tog, I started off just like everyone else, like, guys are doing it. I'm like, okay, spinning. I use a spinning rod. I just didn't like, I felt like it wasn't the rod, obviously, that I didn't like. It was the spinning reel. So I was using like a mid-level Penn spinning reel. I don't think they make it anymore. I forget what it's called, but it was basically the equivalent of what would now be like a Penn Battle. Okay. And so I'm using this and I hook into a fish, which I think is a real nice tog. And I'm trying to get those first couple of feet on it off the bottom so I don't lose it to a snag, right? So I'm trying to horse it a couple of feet. I got the rod. The rod I was using was a little shorter than I would have liked, but it's what I had at the time was my best option. But I was trying to, use the spinning reel to get a couple of foot or two on this tog. And it just, like a spinning reel doesn't have the winching capabilities of like a conventional or a bait caster. And I ended up, so the reel breaks in some way, which I opened it up later and found out that the main gear teeth, like a couple of them just broke right off. And I ended up still getting the fish in. It was only like a 14 or 15 inch tog.
Okay.
And I was just like, holy shit. Like and I was pretty new to tog fishing at the time. I was like, holy shit. Like if these fish can fight like that and this ain't even a big one, like I don't want to use spinning gear for this. I don't know why why do guys do it? So I switched over and I haven't changed since. And this is going back at this point, probably 8 years, 9 years, something like that. And once I switched, I never went back. I use a low profile bait caster with a bait caster rod, with a rod that matches it. And the rod I use, you're going to laugh because it's a rod made by St. Croix and they sell it as like a largemouth bass flipping stick. So it's sensitive, but it's got a lot of backbone because they drag in like 10 pounds of weeds with these bass when they're doing the lily pad fishing, and it just, I've used it for years and I can fish right next to most guys that, maybe not the best of the best. I don't know. I haven't, been on any like elite tog fishing trips, but I can hold my own. I go up to Rhode Island and I'm catching fish over the guy's shoulders. Like I never had a problem using it. I can hold my own with it, but I know it's weird because everyone's using a spinning rod for this. And you guys can bash me if you want, whatever. But my question is, do you guys make like a low profile bait casting type of rod for tog jig?
So that's where the custom rod's going to come into play. You have to find what blank's going to work best for you. And this is a prime example, and I know you guys have just done this recently. I've seen the pictures of sheep's head. It's a big debate for us, a few of us even between in the shop and the pro staff. We'll sit there, I like this rod for sheep's head. I like this rod for sheep's head, and this guy likes this rod. Well, you got three guys that like three completely different rods. My buddy Ted, he's loving the Demon now, and I could not catch a fish on that to save my life. It's more of a finesse rod. And the nice thing about that is I would say if you were ever to get a Century freshwater rod, it would be the Demon. We make 2 models. I can't remember the lengths off top hand and the powers. I do believe the 3 power is the one that's rated a 32nd of an ounce to 1 1/4 ounce. And then I believe it's the 4 power is a 64th of an ounce to a 1 1/4 ounce. So it's a very wide window of what you can use that for on your, smaller jigs. Now, for me personally, I like the Century Weapon Junior, and that is rated, I want to say it's a 1/4 or a half up to 1 1/2, 2, somewhere in that window. To me, it has a little bit more backbone. It doesn't have those parabolic tendencies, which is probably why I don't like the Demon. It does have a little more bend and give in that rod just because the capabilities and what it's supposed to do. I like something that's a little more stiff in the back end but still has a sensitive tip, and I feel that's where the Junior best comes into play. And then we have a guy that likes the Mag Taper Junior, which is a thinner wall, so you're going to have a little bit more sensitivity, and he loves using that for his sheep's head, but to me that's too much for that type of situation. So you have to figure out, you come in the shop, you cast a couple different rods. We could always take you down to the beach real quick. Hey, come with us, try these out, see what you like, and then we go from there and build on a blank that's going to work best for you in that scenario.
So like, and if I bring, so this like you said, this is the perfect example. Joe, this is going to be like the first custom rod I get is going to be a Tog jig rod but a bait caster. That's because cool. It's so like nobody else, like, I don't know. I haven't met anyone else that does it yet. I know there's got to be someone else out. Oh, okay.
So not anymore. And I used to, trust me, and I've caught a couple decent fish that way on the jig. Used to fish the Cape May Lady a lot until I got introduced to a couple guys and started doing more charter trips, which is going to be changing hopefully in the near future too. But with that being said, I used to do it as well. And I remember my buddy Chris O'Brien, before he passed, we got to fish a couple more times before he passed. And he looked over to me one day and says, "You're never catching a double digit that way." I'm like, what do you mean? I just caught a 5-pounder. And the next fish I hooked up on, it just ran and dug in, and it completely snapped me off. I had no control over that fish. And I don't know why, but the spinning rod, I feel like I have more control, because once you set that hook, it seems like they have a tendency more to run around, and it gives you a couple more minutes to give, seconds there to get you to crank on that fish and get it up over the bait caster.
Now, see, that's the reason why I switched. I felt like the spinning setup wasn't really giving me any advantages except for the ability to cast. But once you learn how to cast and flip a bait caster out, I mean, I'm not launching a Tog jig unless I'm Joe Zagorski. I'm not launching a Tog jig, 100 yards from the boat, so I can put that Tog jig, I can flip it out pretty much as far as I comfortably want to put it. But then, like, do you think maybe did you have what rod were you using when you were doing it? You didn't have a custom bait caster Tog jig rod, did you?
I want to say it was a custom Tog jig rod for a bait caster. I wouldn't say that. I used to use it a lot fluking, and I just said one day, I'm like, this has the sensitivity to really try and use it as a Tog jig rod, because, again, it was the same thought process as you. I don't see many people doing it, and, you kind of learn from it. I'm going to say this, and I've seen it happen. Again, another Cape May Lady trip. We're out there fishing, and prime example, that's when I caught, I think, a 6-pounder that way too. Buddy Rich next to me, he's standing there. He caught the biggest fish of the day. I think it was like 9. It was close to 10. It was like 9.8 something. And the next fish, literally, that he hooked up on, It dug him in. He sat there. He waited. It popped out. He got it a couple feet up, and it did it again. And he's like, I don't know what this is, but it don't feel like a tog. Until we saw a leader, and we never got to see the fish, it decided to completely turn around and just make a run towards the bottom, and we knew it was a tog. I feel like if he had a spinning rod, he would have landed that fish. He would have had more control.
Really? Yeah.
I feel like, if I'm on a Cape May boat, I won't even drop my spinning rod. Like, it's on the boat, but I won't even drop it. Like, I'm dropping my rig. I know there's giant fish. I don't want a giant on the spinning rod. I want it.
Well, I don't think I'd want to. I'd rather battle. Neither of us have caught that double-digit tog yet, and I feel like I don't want to hook up to it with, whether it's a spinning setup for a jig or a bait cat. Like, I'd rather have that on my bait casting setup. I feel like that's your best chance of landing it no matter what.
To get back to that there, myself, I'm not in the double-digit club either. Trust me, I have plenty of 9-pound fish. I can't get past that threshold. But I will say this, I have better control when I'm on the rig. And I think it's just more confidence that that line is either 50, 60 pound and your leader is either 50, 60 pound.
Yeah.
I mean, I see guys fish lighter, but I think it's just more of a little bit of a more confidence there. And you're able to just immediately, when you set that hook, just hoist it up. Well, the length of the rod, let's say, is 8 foot. You're going to get it, 5 to 10 feet, depending on how high you swing that rod and where you go with it. That's how quick you get that fish out of that hole real quick, and you're able to work it quicker.
Oh God, I want to go blackfishing so bad now,
dude. I'm trying to invite you up to Rhode Island. Their season opens a month before ours, and you're like,
I just booked another salmon fishing room again.
Who cares? Have you ever you've been up blackfishing in Rhode Island, I'm assuming, or no?
So I'm one of those guys that's kind of, I want to say, snobby a little bit. I'm not leaving Jersey till I get my 10-pounder. I won't.
See, I like his idea though, because if I did go to Rhode Island and I caught an 11-pound fish in Rhode Island, I'd be pissed off. Like I'm gonna maybe stick with him. Like I want my DD from Jersey first.
I do get it, but honestly, when you're like, the Rhode Island tog fishing is awesome. Like, it's less snaggy bottom. There's more fish to go around. The overall average quality is better, but I don't think there's that many really big fish up there. Really, I think you got a better shot at catching a really big tog in South Jersey.
So let's back up there for a second, because I used to be on a podcast with a couple guys. It was very nice to work with them, and it was 3 friends just hanging out doing a podcast together, just talking fishing. It was wonderful. They had a guy up there, and kayak fishing, we'll get into that a little bit if we have time. They had a kayak fisherman on, because that's what all 3 of us did. He was, it's either Connecticut or Rhode Island, 23-pound on a kayak.
Jeez.
Wow.
I'm not saying they're not there, but
they're, I think what you're saying is these fish are bigger, and I think this actually goes back to another thing that you should look into. If I heard this one correctly, there was an article put out about how the growth rate is different all the way from Rhode Island to Virginia. And Virginia having the faster, it's Virginia having the fastest growth rate compared to Rhode Island having the slowest growth rate.
The slowest, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that it said that Cape May or whatever, Delaware, it showed them getting 1 inch bigger per year than anywhere else.
Yeah, I think Cape May is where that begins, that transition begins, and it works its way into the Delaware Bay, if I remember that correctly.
Yeah, I know Frank Mihalik talked about that at his thing, and he said they grow bigger faster in Cape May and then down from there. But yeah, the numbers could get better as you go more north, and it's a lot less snaggier than the shit we fish.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely would prefer my. I use my rig a lot more than the jig and rod. I don't use it that much. I use. I'm nervous of catching a big fish on the spinning rod. I don't want that to happen, because I kind of know where. Like you said, there's only 20-pound test on there. The rig has 50-pound braid with a 50-pound top shot. And
I've seen guys do
I
the
have
top
too.
jig thing with a heavier line. I mean, there's a lot of things in any
I've
kind
seen
of
them.
fishing.
I've seen guys with the spinning setup pull up 20-pound blackfish too. I mean, it happens.
The biggest one I personally saw myself was last winter on the Sea Owl. The guy was fishing with a jig with a spinning rod, and I think that fish weighed 14 pounds and some change. And that was the biggest, like that was the closest I'd ever personally been to a fish that big. And I'm just like, I was wowed. I was like, you're using a jig with a spinning setup. I'm like, I abandoned that like years ago. Like I don't know. I mean, obviously, I guess, maybe there was something on that reel I was using wasn't lined up right, or it just wasn't up to the caliber to do that with. But I don't know. I haven't had any. There hasn't been anything about using the low profile bait caster, one of those Lexus, paired with this like heavy freshwater rod. It sounds crazy, but that being said, I think the biggest fish I caught on that was 8.5, something around there. But I didn't feel like the fish could have owned me at any time. I mean, it's lighter line. It's I don't know, but I guess you kind of talked me out of getting a custom tog jig bait casting rod.
I apologize about that.
John, real quick before we run out of time, do you want to plug all your stuff so everyone knows? Like
he did want to mention that he does a lot of kayak fishing. I know he wanted to mention.
Oh, okay. You want to talk about kayak fishing?
It's up to you guys. I mean, you cut it when you guys need to cut it. If
we could go a little bit if you wanted to talk.
We could talk kayak fishing.
Yeah, that's fine. For me, during the summer, it's really big in the summer, and towards this point of the season, which it's just the weather is not lined up at all this year. I do a lot of flounder fishing out of my kayak. Absolutely love it. I will start the day it opens. I just make sure got the appropriate gear on, just in case you do take a spill. I don't want to get hypothermia. So
you're talking winter flounder.
No, summer flounder.
What part of Jersey are you from, and what part do you fish?
I'm right outside of Camden, Runnymede, New Jersey. So
you're
I'm
way
from
down
there. Yeah, but the nice thing is where I live exactly, I am 4 minutes from the turnpike. I am 10 minutes from the expressway. I am 6 minutes from 295. It can put me to any beach pretty much in the matter of an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, except Seaside and LBI. But I primarily fish south, and this year, just again with the south winds, it just would not stop, and
it
would
just stop.
It's
crazy.
You guys had a better bite than we did, though.
You have any good snakehead spots down there? Any good secret snakehead spots?
I don't do actually any freshwater fishing anymore. So
really?
I've kind of fallen off that wagon and strictly saltwater fish. But as far as snakehead spots, you got to go down to Salem. Salem County is where you're going to find it all in that skinny water.
Do you like surf fishing too, or you only like your kayak?
So I used to like surf fishing until about 3-4 years ago when I got into this kayak fishing. It changed my perspective on it completely.
Once you get in a boat or anything that floats, a raft, a stick, a piece of wood, and you don't get seasick, you're gonna prefer.
Do you use like
off the shore?
Do you use like a paddling kayak or like a Hobie, like a foot pedal?
I have a foot pedal, 2 of them actually. I have an Old Town Predator, which is now the big water. Yeah. It's a 13-foot kayak, pedal drive. That one has a Simrad Go 7 on it. So I have down sand, side scan, the whole 9 yards. Do I ever use it? No. And then I have the Old Town Salty PDL. And that has a Lowrance with a triple shot transducer. So I have this down sand and side scan on that as well. I like the Old Towns. And again, it's preference. What do you feel more comfortable in? how do you want your legs to move in the kayak? They have the fin drive, so you're going back and forth in a Hobie. And the old towns, you're doing bicycle motion because you're actually using propulsion. So there's benefits to both and what works best for you. For me, though, I like the old town because of the bicycle motion. And I also have instant reverse at that point because all I got to do is pedal backwards. With a Hobie, if I want to pedal backwards, you have to pull the latch, switch the fin drive, and do a 360 on it to get it back to where you were at after you have your position. All that being said, preference. Now you go into shallow water, the fin drive can get into even more shallow water because those fins are going to flex compared to the old town. It's just like having the prop in the water. It's going to bottom out at some point.
Do you sheep's head fish out of your kayak?
What's that?
Do you sheep's head fish out of your kayak?
So sheep's head fishing, funny story, 5 years ago, togging, August, at the Barnegat Lighthouse. And I dropped down. I was like, wow, that didn't feel right. It was halfway through the column. Dropped down again, woke up on a sheep's head, and I instantly lost it once I saw it come up. Since that point, I was never able to catch one again. And then till last year is when I finally hooked one towards the tail end of the season, went out and caught another 5 more after that. So I felt like I grasped it. This year, the goal was, and it's funny, my buddy Qua, who's on the team with us, he does all the sheep's head seminars with the Fisherman Magazine. He kind of helped me out get to where I'm at now. And he's like, we always set a goal on my boat. We want to see 100 on the deck. And I'm like, you know what? That's not a bad idea. I'm going to aim for 30. He's like, that's a little drastic to start out, but all right. So far this year, I've cleared 38, and I would hope to get out one more time to at least put 2 more to make it 40. I passed the goal, but I still want that even number of 40 to set it at 50 next year.
And are any of those from your kayak, or that's all from a boat?
All of them are from the kayak this year.
Oh,
and two of them are absolutely. If you guys ever want to come down, just reach out. We're towards the end of this year, though. It's a done deal. So
they're such a cool fish. That was the first. Those pictures you saw that recent trip. That was just me. Joe wasn't there for that.
Okay.
That was the first time I successfully. It was really the first time I targeted them from a boat. I tried from like the shore off some rocks and stuff like where I'd seen them down there in South Jersey, but I never really made a real attempt. And I went out with my buddy Scotty Sevens. He crushes them all the time, and I was down in the area on vacation, so I had to get out with him. And it was a tough day, but those fish are awesome. They're like, they have similarities of like the Blackfish, but in certain ways, like take them even to another level. Like they're fighters. They're really cool.
I want to catch one.
So Joe, I'm going to say this though. If you get the chance, find somebody that does the charters and go with them, because they're going to tell you right out of the bat, hey, you're not doing this right. You just missed the fish. And you're sitting there scratching your head trying to figure out, what am I doing wrong? Yeah. At some point, that light bulb goes off. Oh, that's what it feels like. And then that very next fish, most likely you're going to hook it.
It's totally different. Like you start off thinking like it's going to be similar to a tog bite. And next thing you know, you realize you're fishing with no bait half the time because you already had it stolen. Like, well, you were trying to put it into position and you felt that little scratch and you thought you like rubbed it on the piling or something. It's gone. The crab's gone. The bait's gone. And then you're just fishing the next couple of minutes with nothing even on there. And you start to realize and you start to, it's just something that you have to feel. I totally agree with what he's saying. Like someone has to walk. Yeah,
I got it. I have to go after them for sure. I'll go seriously next year. I'll come with you. I could bring.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Now, how do we plug all your stuff so everyone knows how to find you and follow you and find your rods?
So if you want to find my rods that I've made, the past years, and now working with Century, I don't post too much of those. Unless we get a nice decorative wrap, I'll post that up because it's just something unique and different. Check out Creeley Custom Rods on Instagram or on Facebook, or you could just reach out to me, John Creeley, on Facebook, and I'll be more than happy to help you out.
Awesome. John, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to come on here tonight and explain all this to us. We really do appreciate it. And I really would love to go sheep's head fishing with you. If you ever want to come up here and do any of the shit that we do, it's a reciprocal offer.
Absolutely, guys. Definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, Thank you so much.
Yeah. Not a problem, guys.
Awesome talking to you.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Take care, John.
Bye-bye.
All right, so that was pretty cool. Our first rod builder on the show. A lot of stuff that I never really know, especially that how he pointed out cutting the butt shorter changes the power of the rod. I never thought about that, but yeah, pretty cool. Next week, the guest is Nor'easter, Nor'easter Clothing Company, clothing apparel, Nor'easter Hardcore, Marilou and John.
That's wrong.
Is it?
Yeah, you skipped an entire week.
Fuck. Who is it?
You tried, man. You know what? I had to look because I was like, holy shit. Did he actually look at the schedule and remember who's next?
I thought I did. Maybe my contacts ain't that good.
No. Next week we got Chris Kazar.
Oh, that's right. It's the snakehead one first. I'm excited for Nor'easter. I love all their clothing.
Yeah, Nor'easter, John and Marilou.
Yes, Marilou.
They're both coming on the week of the 14th, and then we got Old School Outdoors. I know some guys were asking about the guy with the tackle shop with the skateboards and the fishing tackle, and he made the custom skateboard for Joe Cermelli. That he's coming on the week of the 21st. And then do you want me to keep going? Or you want to keep anything a secret?
No, let them be intrigued and interested. Okay. It's a surprise.
We got a big guest at the end of the month. You don't want me to tell?
Do we really? I don't even know who it is. Who is it? Yes, you
do.
Who is it? Max? How big of a guest is it? Wait a minute. Let me think.
Max is never coming on this show again. He's annoying.
It's a big guest. I have no idea.
Oh, all right. Then it remains a mystery.
No idea.
It remains a mystery, and if anyone's listening has any suggestions ever, we're scheduling November, and I'll schedule into December too if enough people reach out or have suggestions or opinions. Like we're always looking for suggestions. Anyone that wants to come on.
Oh, it's Tony Maha. It's Tony Maha, and I didn't cheat either. I just remembered it. It's Tony Maha.
There goes the secret.
Yeah, secret's out. All right, we'll be back next week. I have to go to work tomorrow.
All right. Take care. Keep suffering for the fish. Suffer for work like Joe. And we're going to be suffering for the deer. I got to put a freaking tree stand together. I'm probably going to lay in the highway, just like salmon fishing.
Go Yankees. Go Yankees. All right, Deuce, cut this shit.